Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photo editing live stream where you can submit your images before the stream starts and I edit them here for you live using DxO Photolab 9. And the idea here is basically to show you the tools in DxO Photolab, my photo editing workflow, and every 2 or 3 images that I edit, I typically pause and answer any questions you might have about any things that I did. And also, I am an affiliate for DxO Photolab, so if you'd like to support the channel, you can use my affiliate links down below for new customers, and also get a 15% discount code as well. It's just Rob Trek. And you can always buy me a coffee or become a member, or use any of the links down below. My affiliate links for Amazon when you go shopping, all that good stuff. All supports the work that I do here. And I'm going to start working on a video series that will sort of deep dive in a more methodical way my photo editing workflow for Photolab 9. So look for that in the coming weeks, and that'll be available here online for you on YouTube. So good to see everyone. Thanks for the sound check. And I see Larry's here from Arizona, and Bamsem is here, and Roger, good to see you. Paul, Frank. Frank, oh, that's a new name. I'm not sure if it's your first time here. If there's anybody here that's new, let me know in the chat section. It's always great to see new people joining the stream. And let's see, John Follows, good to see you. And okay, so without further ado, looks like I have only 6 images this week that were submitted, so we'll go ahead and get started with these. And I try to think out loud, my thought process and what step of the photo editing workflow that I'm in. So let me switch over to the screen, and we'll start. We'll start with Serge here, because Serge submitted this actually sometime during the stream last week, and I wasn't able to get to it. So we'll just start with his. And this is a beautiful image. It almost doesn't need any editing at all. We just have to make a few minor adjustments, in the composition, I think. But what I always do is I developed a basic preset. Actually, three presets. I have my default preset, an extra sharp, and one designed specifically for high-res shop mode in our OM system and Olympus cameras. So I'm just going to start with the default preset. I typically only use the extra sharp preset, like if I'm doing wildlife, when I want to see the fine details in the feather or fur. But probably 80–90% of the time I just use the default preset. Particularly on a landscape image like this, we don't need it to be super fine. Okay, so there's that. And what the preset does is it applies the DxO optics module, which does lens corrections like distortion, chromatic aberration, and vignetting that would otherwise be there. That's really a necessary step for any image. And assuming you're using a native lens, adapted vintage lenses, sometimes you want to keep all of that character, right? These so-called defects in the lens. But that said, this is a standard 40–150 f4 Pro. And then I also apply noise reduction in this as well, and then a tiny bit of sharpening and contrast as well. Again, these presets are available for free on my website, robtrek.com. And you can find them there, and you can download them and use them to your heart's content. So that's that. So right now I'm just thinking about the overall composition and geometry. So, do I need to straighten the horizon? Do I need to fix any perspective distortions? And in this case, I really don't see any issues here. And then I look at, or I think about the overall composition in terms of, all the standard things that try to make a more pleasing or more calm type of image. Leading lines, of course, we have sort of a leading squiggly line here. And then we also have you know, balance of light items, dark items. And another thing is particularly on this image, what I really like, there's a really nice accent here with this person walking in this little trench. So I always like to add an accent to the image, particularly images that are relatively simple, right? This is, you know, a relatively simple composition, and then adding a little accent can make all the difference in the world. In this case, um, you know, it simply helps the eye stay in the center of the frame. But there's other accent things like, you know, that can be used to give perspective or scale to a particular landscape. But I don't feel like that's what this is for. So I'm thinking about all of these things and considering all of these elements in the image. Of course, we have this beautiful castle in the background, and then this wonderful minimalist landscape in the beginning. But this has a really nice accent built in as well as this geometry of these waving lines. So that looks really. So this has a lot of great elements to it, like not being oversimplified, but not cluttering the image either. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to try and make sure that the steeple here is centered in the image, and it looks like it is, but we can always tweak it just a tiny bit. And I always like to do geometric changes first, because if I try to do local adjustments later, unfortunately, the local adjustments do not follow any geometric changes you make, particularly if you're correcting for horizon or perspective distortion. So I try to get all of the geometry out of the way first. And, you know, really good rule of thirds here. I think the only thing I might change is the aspect ratio. But I'm going to drag this down, and then I can see that the steeple is just a tiny bit off here. So I'm going to move this over just a tiny bit to center. And I'm going to look at maybe a 16 by 9. And generally, I like to keep within the standard aspect ratios that are listed here. And then I have some custom ratios that I've made for other things. And these are common ratios. They're not weird. But I'm going to try standard 16 by 9. And let's do that. And the reason I like to stick to standard ratios, it makes it easier to share, you know, on social media if you're going online, or to print. It's easier to frame. You can find some standard off-the-shelf frames that'll fit these various aspect ratios. So now I'm going to try and balance the image. So I've balanced it in terms of symmetry, right? So we have a good balance left and right. And then top to bottom, we have such a dominant foreground. I'm thinking I might leave 2/3 of the frame down here, just as it was originally. But I want to be conscious of my corners here and get a feeling that, you know, if your eye starts down here, you can be led into the scene from any of the corners. So of course we have nothing going on in the top. But I'm going to look down here, and I feel like this is sort of in the middle of the path. And that would lead you in this way if you wanted to go in that direction. So let's crop that there and see how that looks. And not bad. It feels a little bit still too heavy on the bottom. So what I might do is break the rule of thirds and just balance this more 50-50 and just go with symmetry. So I'm going to have this line here is this little box here is the center. So I'm going to try and manage that the best I can. So I think that works, a nice 50-50 split. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I don't want to lose the ambience of the castle here, sort of in this faded into the background with the sort of fog or haze. But I do want to see if I can bring out a little more detail in the sky, just to add a little drama there. So I'm going to use just a, what do they call this? A linear control line. So I'm going to go down. And I'm going to feather this. This area down here is all feathered. Then up here is 100%, right? So I'm going to try and feather this away from the castle to something like that. And then the eyedropper can be anywhere really in here, because you can mask based on color and light. So over here they call it chroma and luma. And 50-50 is usually a good place to start by default as far as masking goes. But let's just crank in some clear view and see. Kind of like that. It didn't really add much any details here in the sky, but it did bring the tip or steeple in just a bit more. So that gives it just a tiny bit more definition. And I noticed there's actually a little bit of color in here as well. So what I might do is I'm going to use a standard gradient filter. We're going to make a new mask here by hitting the plus key. We'll just feather that just a bit. But I'm going to see if I can crank up maybe some of the colors in here. Okay, not bad. Sorry, 1 second. All right. I see some sort of magenta, something like a little bit down in here. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. What I wanted to do was, let's just try vibrancy. So there's some blues and then some pinks up here. So let's go over here to this color. I'm going to spread this into the warmer tones and see if there's a way I can bring that out as well. Maybe spread into the blues. Okay, it's very, very subtle, but I can see a little bit of pink up in here now. I can also maybe shift the white balance just a tad warmer. Just to bring that out a bit. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to try some clear view and micro contrast. And then I'm going to add a submask here, and I'm going to try and brush out using a negative brush. Just right in here. And I'm going to turn the flow down and opacity. Let's make that 50%. And just bring a little bit more of that haze into the castle. Like so. Okay, good. So I like the background. I was able to draw out the colors here. And I'm going to try to enhance the foreground because these colors, I can see a little bit of this pink and magenta in the grass as well. So I might try and emphasize that as well. So let's try another linear gradient or graduated filter. Make a new layer. This is the graduated filter. I'll try and get my vocabulary right here. We'll just drag this up to about here. And I'm just going to just try a little bit of clear view, some micro contrast. And then I'm going to oversaturate it just to see where the colors are. So there's some red tones here and some yellows. So let's see, what if I just hit vibrancy a bit? Okay. And then I'm going to dial in the reds a bit more. And we'll just feather that into the yellows. And then I'm going to cool it off a bit temperature-wise. Just a tad. We're at 58. Let's try 56. Maybe right there. Okay, so what we've done here is now this person is too red, right? Their face. So all I have to do is go back up here, add a submask, and a negative brush again. And actually, I could probably use an auto masking brush, and just get in really tight. And just subtract a little bit in here. Okay, let me go back to a regular brush. Okay, I'm going to increase the opacity. Okay, good. And take a little bit off the close. Let me zoom in down here. And just take off some here. Tiny bit there. Okay, good. And one other thing I might do, because if you print this large, I'm thinking maybe we want to see a little more detail in here, but I don't want to take away from this kind of soft mist. So let me see if I can do something there. So I'm going to use the AI selection tool and just select that. And maybe let me try micro contrast first. That's good. Okay. And then I'm just going to brush in. Let's make a new mask. Maybe a little bit of just layer this a bit. And let me take a little bit off the top. Okay. Let's just pull this in a bit. All right, so I'm over processing it a bit. What are these, birds, or these are just rocks? All right, we'll leave that there. Okay, I'm going to do... I think that's it. So let's do a side-by-side. And there's the before and after. So I think we took basically a raw image, which are, you know, inherently they need to be edited, right? Given what they are, which usually means just adding saturation and contrast. But we can be very selective to emphasize the parts of the image and composition that we want to share in our editing. So that's kind of the difference between just creating maybe a straight out of camera JPEG, which the camera would do sort of some contrast and saturation, versus, you know, editing directly ourselves the raw image. And we can make a pretty dramatic difference. So I think that's good. So if we do a split view with this, I can sort of just go back and forth there. But you can see the difference. Basically, we cropped off all the bottom there. And that's the final image. All right, let's go over here to thank you, Serge. Beautiful image. And over here, I'm going to hit the F9 key to bring my panels back in. And okay, I have a hurdle of horses here. So again, I'm going to apply my basic preset. And I might actually, let me try extra sharp. There we go. So it's just a tiny bit sharper. And I'm trying to think. This is the most interesting part of the image, right? For me. But this may be just a family as well, right? Dad, mom, child, and maybe some cousins or uncles over here. These are probably uncles and aunts. So let's do... You know, the geometry is fine. I wish it was cropped a little bit wider. But there are some elements here. We have very significant background versus the subject. Unlike in the previous image, the background kind of was the subject, the entire scene. In this scene, we have a very distinct subject in the foreground. So typically I like the subject to be a little bit, excuse me, a little brighter than the background. And then we also have some water, and water typically has too many speculars straight out of camera, so I like to darken the water. So I'm just thinking about the overall composition in terms of balancing the lighting and tempering the elements that really don't need to be as prominent in the image. So I'm thinking, I don't think I need to do anything with the composition. It's already very tight. And I like the idea of the whole family being here. So let me go here to my AI tool and see if I can just select the animals. I just need a little water here. Okay, so let's see if I can make them brighter. So I'll just go up about a stop here, and then I'm going to go to the global panel and just bring it down about a stop. Maybe even more. Let's come down 2 stops. Go go back here and then raise this up some more. Maybe, yeah, about there. Because if I do it too much, it's going to look like we just cut and paste them into the scene, right? So I need to kind of balance that right about there. Okay, I like that. And the water is tempered quite a bit, but let's go ahead and create a new mask for the water. And for water, I typically do clear view and then just pull in the blacks a little bit more. And whenever I make something darker, I tend to try to adjust the white balance a little bit cooler as well. So we'll just go a little bit down like that. And it's still a bit ripply, so maybe try the micro contrast and back that off. Just here, let's try regular contrast. Something like that. I guess that works. Just a little bit. All right. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to do is maybe add a little bit of light painting to emphasize the highlights and shadows, to feature the lines and curves of the animals themselves. And in this case, the light is almost coming, I'm guessing, but a little bit from the top right in this direction, like that, at an angle. But what's throwing me off is it's very soft. I'm guessing a cloud passed over that's softening the light a bit, but the shadows are almost kind of straight down and back a little bit, right? So I'm going to go create a new mask with a light brush. Let's turn the flow down to just something down here. And I think I'll work with the shadows. So let's just put a little bit more shadow down in here. Just darken that a bit. Okay, let me just do a quick compare. Yeah. Okay, maybe a little bit there. And then let me darken back in here a bit too. Just a little bit along the edges. Okay, and then, yeah, this whole background can be darker. And I'll just darken these areas just to create some depth. But let me let me create a new mask. I'm going to brush in just a little bit of light as well. Just right here, just to show the branches. Maybe a little bit on the leaves. So let me see. A little bit more here. Here. Okay. I think that's it. So let's do a side by side. So I hit the F9 key to push the panels out to the sides. And this is what we came up with. So I feel like I could do just a little more. Sometimes when I see them side by side, I see a little more I can do. So let me bring out my tool panel out here. I believe this was my shadow brush. Just going to add a little bit more. Okay. What was the other thing? There was one other thing I was looking at. Can't remember now. I think it was right in here. I think that's good. So there you have it. Oh, white balance. I'd like to make it just a little bit warmer. So that brush is darkening things. If I cool that off a tiny bit, and then this brush was some of the highlights. I'm going to warm this up a little bit. And then globally, just add a little bit of warmth. And pull in the greens a tiny bit. Let me see what vibrant looks like. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to back this off a little bit. We were at 54. Let's try 56. All right, now I'm pretty happy with that. All right. So there you have it. Really didn't need to do any composition because it's very, very tight crop as it is. But that's the before. And then there's the after. And not that we need to see any fine feather details or fur details, but this will just give you an idea, on what we recovered in terms of fine details, right? it just does an amazing job, and reducing the noise. All right, awesome. Okay, we have one here from William. And F9 key to bring the panels back. So we have a crew here and a coach. Of course, I don't think they're called a coach, but anyway, you have this guy over here. Let me apply my basic or default preset here. And, you know, whenever I have, just like I did with the horses, I generally like the subjects to be a little bit lighter. Maybe blur this area out here a little more to try to isolate the subject just a bit more. And I think I definitely want to go wide, so maybe more than 16 by 9. Let's try 16 by 7. And just go with, that's about right. So I got about 1/3 down here, 1/3 here in the middle with the people, and then 1/3 up here for the background. And I want to, I'm going to use a control line. And I'm going to put the eyedropper right on, and then tighten up right on the water, and then tighten up the chroma mask and luma so it doesn't affect, you know, the center here. So let's try a little clear view first. Let's dial back the contrast. Well, not that much. And just pull in the tone curve a bit. And then give it a little bit of cooling. Okay. And then let's make a new mask. We'll use the AI tool. Let's just try select subject. Almost. Let's try the rectangle tool here. Oops, this one. Let me get rid of this. So I might have to do this in stages. So I'm going to select the boat, and then I'm going to add a submask, and then try and select just the people. There we go. That's pretty good. Then I'm going to hold the shift key. Sorry, I didn't mean submask. I'm going to hold the shift key. Let me get rid of these two submasks. I meant shift key. So let's see if I can get the oars in there as well. All right, good enough. So it took me five or six small masks to get everything in there just right. All right, so this guy's jacket's pretty bright, so I'm going to have to probably back that off a bit later. But I'm going to just give a little bit there. And then add a little warmth because I brightened it. Okay. I'm going to diffuse it a little too. Hold on. I want to make changes. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm going to add a submask and a negative brush and just take a little bit off this jacket. Okay. Let's make a whole new mask and just do a little bit of light painting. So flow, yeah, flow is nice and low. I'm just going to add a little bit of light here and here, and then just a little bit along the top. Just add like that. All right, now let's work on this water a bit, and I'm going to use the auto masking brush. And just add a little bit of splash in this, or add a little bit of specular to the splashes here. So let's see if we can do that. And then add some clear view and micro contrast. Okay, good. My brushing here is a little bit weak over here. Let me go back to this. I'm just going to pull the opacity back. Okay. Last thing I might do is just, I'm going to do a new mask here with a graduated filter. Just feather this in. Let's make it even more feathered. And I'm going to go down here and just add a little extra blur. Whoops. This one. How come I lost? Let me grab that. Okay. I think we're okay. Okay. Let's see where we're at. All right, one more thing. Let me go back to my mask here. It's not that one. I'm gonna just add some diffusion down here. So I want it to feather in just a bit more. Mm. One of these is creating a little bit too much halo. Let me see. Not that one. Yeah, it was this one. Mask 2. So I'll back that off. All right, that's good. All right, so there's the original on the left and my edit on the right. So again, it's basically contrast and saturation, right? But following my same idea of illuminating the subject a little bit more, adding a little warmth, and then cooling off and separating the background. This time I added a little bit of extra blur, but I think it still looks pretty natural. Then of course the speculars here are pretty cool. So we can do a split, and there's the edited image. And now we can really hone in on the individuals there. All right, let me go over to the chat section and see what we have here. So Heather is here. Good to see you. And Larry, Frank is asking, how do you submit photos? There should be a link in the description down below to submit the photos. Generally, I like to get them before the stream, but if I still have time and the energy, I can do it after I finish everyone else's. And let's see. I'm just going down. It says, my image this week was taken with my 9mm body cap lens. It's a shame you don't have the option to defish it in camera the way you can an 8mm. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a cheap lens, and I kind of like the distorted look personally, but and Larry says those were wild horses on the Salt River Tonto National Forest. Okay. And Heather says, what are you clicking the toggle between original and process, not to compare side by side? Oh, so there is a couple of different comparison tools here. So let me bring my panels back in. Okay, so we're editing the image, right? We're back in the editing mode. So I can sort of individually select a mask if I want to compare with and without the mask over here, right? So I'm sure you know what that is. And I'm just clicking on compare right here, this button here, on and off, to compare all of the changes. Well, almost all. Now there's a drop down here that I want to compare to. So right now I'm comparing all corrections except local adjustments. Or I can compare it against no corrections but keep the geometry, meaning the crop. So if I do this and do compare, now I'm comparing before and after with all the changes. Or if I want to look at it without basically the original image, without the crop, I'm doing it this way. So it's very important what you're selecting here to compare it against. And sometimes you'll see additional line items in here depending on where you're at in the editing and comparison. So for example, if I were to export this, Um, I'll just do a random export here. Give that a few seconds to export. And when that's done exporting, you'll have additional options to compare, right? So, yep, almost there. First image always takes a while to export. So now when I do this drop down, I can compare it against what I just exported. So if I make some additional changes, right, like let's say I select the water again and I want the water to be green for some reason. Maybe that'll do it. Let's see. Give it a second for the preview to update. Oops, I meant to do this. If I want it to be green, like that, right? So now if I compare, I can compare to the one I exported before. So that's when I click the compare button, I'm comparing against the previous export, which had the water in its normal color, versus what I just changed it to here. Or I can compare it back again against the original, like that. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. And EDC says, the stream fair is very Bob Ross. Yeah, I've gotten that a few times. I'll consider that a compliment. And David is here. David, how you doing? We're going to see you tomorrow morning, right, at the Brookside Gardens. My photo is When Boys Become Men. Okay, nice title. And he would then be the Cox or Coxing. Okay. Yeah, I knew it wasn't, they weren't called the coach. We call him the Coxian or Cox. Let's see. And let's see. The last one here is, will you have to pay for this? I have a great photo, but I don't know how to. No, you don't have to pay. I take donations, like if you want to buy me a coffee or something, but I edit every image that comes in best I can. And if you want to support that later, you can buy me a coffee or become a member, all of those good things, but it's not required. It's totally optional, and there's a link down below in the description of this live stream that should have the link so that you can submit the images. And that's it. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. And let's see. I have a gorilla. I think you guys mentioned you're going to send me a gorilla. Wow. So let's apply basic or default preset. I might even go extra sharp just to bring out the extra details. And this has got me thinking a lot of different directions. We have a really nice contrast between the background and foreground. So it could almost be a black and white. I'm just gonna get a little bit creative on this one. Let's just go with a black and white. And we have black and white options. I can try these, but I think neutral. Let's go with a neutral. And Let me do a crop. I think a square crop would look good with this guy. The question is which direction. We can do something a little unconventional and go this way. This feels a little better. I think if they were standing, it would be more interesting this way. But in a sitting position, I'd like to just have it go this way. Part of the problem is this pole, right? This minimizes that pole a bit. And I'm just going to use rule of thirds again to kind of center. We'll create a little bit of an even space. Okay. I may remove this and this shadow up here. So those are kind of distracting to me. So I'm going to do, let's get the feather up. Just going to get rid of that shadow maybe. That's fine. How about this guy? Let me tighten up the feathering a bit. Find a good balance. All right, good. All right, so let's add a little contrast. So I'm gonna let me just start with the eyes. Make it right in here and here. Add some clear view, some micro contrast first. Then just push this. Just to bring the speculars out a bit. So there we go. Now we can see he's really looking at us, right? Or she, I don't know. And let's make a new mask, and I think control points might work well here. So I just want to emphasize some of the lighter tones. So I'm going to do a very tight luminosity mask. Let me get in here. Okay. And let's just push those up a little bit at a time. Ooh, that's a bit too much. Okay, perfect. We'll put the same. Now, if I click here, it's going to just duplicate the control point and all the settings. I may need to do a different one. No, this is working. So I'm just picking the brighter areas. Wait. Okay, I'm just making sure. Maybe a little less micro contrast. I'm going to back this off just a tiny bit. Okay, let's see how we're doing. All right, good. Now, let's work on the grass a little bit. Well, I can do a little bit more with that control point. A little bit there, maybe a little bit more there. Drop one here. Getting exactly what I want, but I think that'll work. Okay. Let's make a new mask. This time I'm just going to brush. Maybe I'll just use the auto masking brush. And let's just add some layers of light in here. And let me temper the highlight here a bit. A little bit tighter on the luma. Okay. I just need a little bit more light right in here. Let's use this auto brush. Okay. Let me get in here. I need to get this off. So I'm going to use a negative brush. All right, let me see where we're at. Almost. I'm going to go over here to the global. Just add a little texture. Maybe I should do it with the local. Let me get the AI tool, make a new mask. And just, let's see if we can do select background. That's fine. And just pull that in a bit. Let me start over. Just want that part. And maybe I'm going to hit the shift key and just get in here. Okay. And if I blur that a tiny bit. Nah, I kind of like it the way it is, but just not quite. Okay. I think it was this one, or let me grab this control point. Just going to add one more here. That's not looking too good there. Let me make a new mask. I'm going to do a separate control point. And a little extra micro contrast. All right, let's go with that. So there's the original image, and there's my edit. Couple of things. I probably need to fix this part right here a little bit, because you can see the edit where I brushed it out. That'd be an easy fix. And then the pole here. So let me do that real quick. So I'll start here. Let me grab something over here and feather that. I might have to make a new one. Let's see. Not quite getting this right. Photoshop's really good at this. I mean, you can kind of get by. That's good enough. All right, anyway. And then this one just needs to be feathered more, I think. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's a little better. Anyhow, yeah, I like it. I like it. That feels pretty good. All right. Thank you for Heather for sending that. Let's edit the next one. F9 key. So I think this is like one of the World Trade Center things. I've never been up there myself personally. I haven't been to New York since before 9/11. Interesting. So Paul, I think this is Paul's. Said you used the 9mm fisheye. I mean, let me apply basic preset. Maybe extra detail. Just to bring out the buildings a bit more. Now I could try to correct for the barrel distortion here a little bit. It's in the perspective tool. Or it's called distortion. Let me turn this off. Select fisheye. And then just eyeball it. That looks pretty good. And then we can move this up. So that's with the fisheye distortion corrected somewhat. Since it's a very tight crop, typically if I know I'm gonna do any kind of distortion corrections, perspective or skewing, keystoning errors, I'm always going to shoot wider than I need because I know in post-processing I'm going to have to make room. So this one's a little bit too tight to really get a perfect distortion correction, but that looks about right. Okay, we'll do that. Let's see, that's not doing anything. This could go as a black and white as well because it's relatively monochromatic. We have basically some blues here, gray tones, and black. But there's this line of people down here that's really interesting too. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna go black and white. Part of the reason is because these buildings are so blue. If the buildings were more like this one, I'd probably stay color. I don't know. Let me try. Let me try strong black and white. And I'm going to use the AI tools to kind of select these buildings. I hit the shift key. I can probably do this and that. And just make these very contrasty. Something like that. Okay, and then let's bring out this reflecting thing here where the tower used to stand. I don't know if I can do the AI tool again. Let me try this rectangle thing. No, it's not really letting me select. Yeah, it's just not understanding this. So let me do. There we go. That's better. So I'm going to try and bring this out. Like so. Okay, let me check my centers. Pretty good job here centering. I wonder if I come in. Oh, I'm kind of missing this whole bottom part though. Let's do a 3x2. All right. Wish I had a little more headroom up there, but that's okay. This one building needs to be brighter. Let me, because I tied all the masks together for the buildings, I need to make a new mask for that building. So I want it to be and some more contrast in there. Okay. And then one more mask here. I like this line of people. I'm just gonna dab a little bit in here. Okay. We'll just do a little negative brush along the top. Okay. I will call it there. So, defished I did did a little defishing, and then, contrast. And that was it. I feel like the image is still a little bit on the dark side. Let me look at the histogram. Yeah, it's a little bit dark. Let me try smart lighting. Okay, that's better. We'll just give it a little bit here. Let's make a new mask. Very tight luma. Okay. There we go. All right. Now I'm done. So there you have it. Very cool. All right. Let's do the next one here from John. And John is getting a lot of good use out of this stump. Kind of like me, I have a stump in my backyard. I don't know if this is your backyard, but I have a stump in my backyard that I like to get shots of squirrels and particularly birds eating whatever I put out there. So let's do our basic preset. And we just need to temper the highlights a bit, darken the background. I don't see any geometry. Composition-wise, maybe... It looks like it's raining. That's pretty cool. May just come in a bit tighter. A little bit tighter. See a 3x2. Okay. I'm gonna hit the eye real quick. Don't see any color in there, unfortunately. Okay. And let's hit control points. Let me just hit some of the highlights. So I'll do a new mask. Just pull those in a bit. Right about there. And then let's darken the background. So I'm going to use the AI tool, see if I can just grab this whole thing. Yeah. So I'm going to invert it and just pull the background down a bit. Cool it off a tiny bit. And then let's make a new mask. Let's use control points again. Just want this log to be, or this stump to be a little bit darker. Okay, and then let's select the animal, or the squirrel. What? You can't find the animal? Almost. It sees it as a person. That's funny. So I use select people in this one. That's hilarious. Okay. I'm just going to give them a little more color. Okay. So there's the original. So basically I cropped in, saturation, contrast, and that's it. Very good. Okay, so let me check the chat section real quick. One second. Okay. Let me scroll up. Okay, so Gainu said we'll send it. Okay, I'll check. I can edit a few more while I'm here. Let me get to the chat sections and I'll edit a couple more. Guys are chatting amongst each other. Heather says I brushed out the poll. Heather did the gorilla photos, so that's cool. Again, it says in rule of third, I law, what is the perfect side to mark your subject with the grid lines? Like left or right is the best for the subject. Okay. there's it. They call it a rule of thirds. The rules in general, and with this subject here, like when I'm cropping, generally speaking, you want to be on the line for whatever your subject is, like these grid lines here. And then if you want to have it point to something, what they say is like the crosshairs here are right on the eye. So those are sort of the basic uh, applications for the rule of thirds, is to be on the line or in the crosshairs, right? However, the rule of thirds is also really good for giving a little depth to the image. So in this case, it's not the best example, but we have this bottom thirds here, which would be your foreground. The middle, you want to be sort of the midground, and then the top would be the background. Now the subject itself can be in the foreground, midground, or background. In this case, the subject here is in the midground. But we're trying to create depth in layers. So the closest objects typically you want to put in the bottom thirds, and then something that's a little bit further back in the midground, and then the background, of course, is this blurry area. And you can do that vertically or horizontally, depending on what your composition is. So the rule of thirds is just sort of a guideline to, for me, balancing the image and creating depth. Either through the subject actually having some depth, like in this image here where the background is pretty far away, or balancing the lighting, so you can create depth through dark and bright areas to balance the image. Or you can just do a straight up alignment of the rule of thirds to create space. Now the second part of your question was about left or right side. The conventional thinking is you have the square, it depends if it's an animal or a person, what direction are they looking in or heading towards. So in this case, the squirrel is kind of looking over to the right, so you want to leave extra space on the right side. That's kind of the conventional thinking. However, there are plenty of compositions that is opposite of that, where you might put the squirrel like this so that he's facing out of the frame like that. And sometimes that works. I don't think it works in this case too well, but it can work. And a lot of there's very practical reasons for leaving space over here, so that the subject has a direction they're looking at, a subject has a direction they can move into. Also, in more commercial type settings, this would be a good place to put ad copy, right? Where you put some text in here advertising this squirrel or advertising squirrel food. I don't know, something like that. So you can kind of get an idea. There's multiple uses for the rule of thirds, right? So I like to use it mostly for balancing, and then where I put the subject left or right is going to depend on what else is in the scene. There's really not much else going on over here to the right, but there's a good example of one on the left. Let me pull that up. And this will go back to the gorilla image where if they were standing, I might change the position, right? I'm gonna find it. So here's two examples of where I think the composition works better here. I think the composition works better here because I'm standing on the right of the frame, you know, out of, you know, it's because I'm not looking out of the frame, I'm looking directly at you. So to me, this composition works pretty well, even though it's kind of opposite what most people do. And same thing here, I'm looking out of the frame, but you have a pretty good context of what I'm looking at because of the left side of the frame. And the left side of the frame was much more interesting because of that pier that's sitting there. So, you know, these choices are all very subjective, right? You know, somebody might really like the way I composed that, and others might think, you know, that was terrible. But it's all subjective. You do whatever you want. But I just want to kind of give you how I think about rule of thirds and how I use it. And Saber Cyber says, I just picked up a Pen F with a 45 equal 1.8. Wow, for 375. Yeah, that's a killer deal. The Pen F in it itself goes for like $800 to $1,400, depending on condition. If it's in decent shape, it's $1,000 minimum. The 45 millimeter lens sells brand new on sale right now for 280 bucks. That's typically the used price, between 250 and 300. So yeah, you got a killer deal. And thank you Hank, for that. Thank you, Heather. Yes, World Trade Center Memorial and new tower. Oh, that must have been when you were down here when I saw you. That's cool. And awesome edit, thank you. And Paul says, I've sent my edit in. Okay, we'll take a look. And you also did a black and white, and very different this week, yes. I assume you mean the kind of images we got, because we've been getting a lot of birds, right? And your example of the grillet edit is an example of looking out more towards the short third opposed to the most space. Okay. And your edits are always great. Oh, thanks. Okay, so let's take a look at what's come in and see how much I can get, how much more I can do today. Okay, so we have three. I can do these three. These are pretty straightforward. So let me download these. So I'm downloading these now. There's 4 of them, including Paul's edit. And we will, we'll be right back. Let's take about a 1-minute break. Visually, I'll be right back. Okay, I think I have them here. So here is Paul's edit. I'll set this as a reference. And we'll compare it to, oh, you know what? Oh, here it is. I thought I accidentally overwrote mine. Yeah, here we go. So there's Paul's edit. So he didn't do any of the fisheye correction and left it in color. So yeah, it's a subjective choice. You know, I just kind of straightened everything out and made it black and white, right? So very nice edit though, Paul. Good job. Um, you know, looking at this now, one more thing I could have done is emphasize the reflection here and here a little bit more, as well as this little bit of flare, this cloud or something reflecting. Because I can clearly see it in this one. This one maybe emphasize a little bit more. So what I would do is just get a brush and just brush in there. Like that. Okay. Let's see what's new here. It looks like this one. So a couple little birds. I just said we didn't get any birds, and now I got all these birds in here. All right. So let's apply. I'm going to do extra detail. It looks like it might have misfocused a tiny bit in here. Just a tiny bit. Maybe. It's, well, maybe not. But we definitely need to crop in. So let's do a square crop. And just bring it right in. Okay. And I'm going to try and select the birds. I wonder if I just do birds or animals. Yeah, I can do animals. Oops, I don't want that one. I just want to work on this one. Because the background's already pretty dark. I just need to let's try. Ooh, the leaves are in there too. We can temper that a little bit. Let's do that. And then okay, so clearly we have a couple leaves in front. And that's contributing to some of the softness I'm seeing, because I think you nailed focus, but because there's leaves in front of this birds, it looks really a little bit soft. I'm going to go down here to the color wheel and select greens. Just pull that back. See if we can add a little micro contrast. Tiny bit of clear view. And then globally, let's brighten this up a bit. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my local adjustments. Let's make a new mask because there's a little bit of right in there. I think I'll just use a control point and just desaturate right in here because there's kind of reds and blues and greens in that. So I'm just going to desaturate the whole thing. Maybe add some more micro contrast and clear view. Not so much there. Okay. Let me just brush in here a little bit too. And desaturate the greens. I'm gonna have to come over a bit. All right. Now let's add a little bit light to the eyes. Or at least the one eye. Good. Some clear view. A little bit of micro contrast. And then let's temper this one highlight here. Just a little bit. And then let's make these beaks just stand out a little bit. So I'm using the auto masking brush. I think some clear view, micro contrast, and just a slight push. On the luminance. And then let me get in here. Let's do some micro contrast. A little bit of a push there. All right, now let's work on some of the fine details. So maybe if I do, let me go back to the bird mask. Let's try this. Sharpening. So I'm sharpening just the birds because this is I selected the bird mask up here. In case you missed it, I selected this here. And now I'm just adding sharpening. And I think I can do a little more with unsharp mask. If that's here, let me see. It's not. Let's try force details. Okay. Okay, that's good. All right. And then I'm just going to temper some of the highlights again. Make a new mask. I'll just brush it. This one is a little bit strong. That one's a little bit strong. So we'll just pull those in a bit. And you'll notice I haven't talked about this today, but I try to always keep a straight line in the selective tones. That makes a nice curve and looks the most natural to me when I make adjustments like this. And then if it's still not enough, I might just do a linear pull this way. I think that's good right there. All right, let me go back to my bird mask again. See if I can just push the shadows a bit more. No, I don't think I can without making it look too unnatural. And then one more thing, I'm just going to brush in a little bit of darkness in here. And there. And there. I'll just do a linear pull. Okay, I think that's about the best I can do. This eye maybe just a little bit more. Bring out the red in here. And not so much. Okay. All right. So one little thing. This one corner has just a bit in there I can take out. And I'm going to try and just balance this a bit. Okay. Give it a second. It froze up on me. 1 second. I forgot to download the optics module too. I need to do that too. But I think it just froze on me. We'll give it about 30 seconds to come back. If not, I might have to restart. It's getting there. Okay, let's see. Let me download the optics module. That'll fix some of the sharpness too. That's one thing. I have to watch out. These little green arrows down here, you have to make sure you download those optics modules. And then I'll check it here. I think we're good. Okay, yeah, much better. All right. So now let's do a side-by-side, compare it against the original. So yeah, these birds were buried back there, but it's cool that you spotted them and were able to get a shot. And you know, with some very selective editing, I had to really be very selective, particularly with the green cast that the leaves in front were creating, and then brightening up the overall scene. I think you exposed it really well. Whether it was an intentional or not, you were able to preserve the highlights as well very nicely on the cheeks of this bird. And that's really kind of what saved it overall. So if we do a slider like this, we can kind of come in and see the difference, you know, in the sharpening. So DxO is really good at extracting the fine details out. I overprocessed a bit when I look at it this close. We're at 250%. So I would probably go back in and back this off a little bit before I actually publish it to anyone. But if you back up a little bit, you know, we're about 90% there with respect to the final image. So very cool. All right, let's see. Let's go over here. My computer is starting to drag a little bit, unfortunately. I'm not sure what's causing it. I probably have too many Chrome tabs open or something, but let's download the next optics module. And then we'll apply, let's go with extra detail again, F9 key. And I don't know if we're going to be able to save those highlights, but let's, and this bird's cut off, so we'll just ignore that one. But let's do a vertical. I don't know if I want to keep the reflection or not. I think that looks good. Let's just globally darken this a bit. Because I'm going to darken the background anyway. Let's do that. And then we'll select the animal. Very good. See if I can temper that highlight a bit more. Okay. Not bad. Yeah, so we did get a lot of the highlights back. But blue herons, if you're going to use exposure compensation, I usually do a -2 for the blue herons because of the white, particularly the whites here usually, and the white on the top. And in this case, you have a strong highlight because of the sun. But I would have done I typically do -2 when I use exposure comp. But yeah, this is nice. What is this? This is the 100 to 500 L lens. Nice, really nice. Oh, the R6 Mark III. Very nice camera. All right. So let's exaggerate some of the colors here. So I'm still on the bird. I'm just going to crank up the vibrancy. Maybe the saturation a bit. Just the hair. Okay. And then let's add a little bit of warmth. Just a tad. Now let's brighten up the face. So I'm going to make a new mask. We'll start with the eye's pretty well lit. Let's get right in here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to separate that too much from the water. Yeah, that's not looking good. Let me try again. Let's try a masking brush. If I just push the shadows. Okay, that's good. And then a little micro contrast. And then just a slight push across the board. Okay. See where we're at. Kind of there. I need to feather that a bit more. So let me create a submask with a regular brush. That's good. Right in here. Okay. Maybe temper the highlights on the legs a bit. So let's do a new mask just for the legs. And just pull those in a bit. And add a little bit of color. Okay. Select the water with the AI mask. Bet if we get rid of those speculars, nah, it's going to be too hard. But I'll temper them a bit. And then let me add some warmth overall. Because the majority of the bird is in shade. So I'm okay if I make it warmer than it really needs to be. Okay, and then one more thing I might do is just on this eye, let me use a control point and just get right there. Let's see if I can just exaggerate the color a bit. Maybe on the beak too. The beak needs to be tempered a bit too. So we'll do a new control point for the highlights. Okay, now it's a little bit too crispy because I tuned most of my presets for 20 megapixel micro four thirds. So I'm going to just tweak this a little bit more because this camera has a 33 megapixel density or whatever. So I might need to back off some of this. So I don't want it to be too crispy. Yeah, it's the unsharp mask. Just add a little bit back in up here. Okay, I'm going to call it there. So there's the original on the left. There's my edit on the right. So this was a tough one because it was very high contrast, right, on the subject itself. So I just tried to temper that a little bit, primarily up here. Now I didn't want to bring the shadows up on the left side too much because to me that would almost make it look like the bird was cut and pasted into the scene. So I didn't want to get that look, but I did want to bring out the head and the eyes the best I can. And then we just had to temper the highlights that were kind of coming in everywhere. So I was able to do it everywhere except right here at the top and over in here. So let's just do a split view and look at the fine detail on the bird. And I think that came out pretty good. I need to warm up this area just a bit. Needs to be a little bit warmer. I think it was a brushing mask, this mask. Let me just add a little more warmth. Okay, that's better. Okay, so yeah, so we pulled back a lot of detail. Right? Yeah. No corrections. Here we go. So I have to zoom in 300% so you can see it. But I think that came out really nice. Still a little bit crispy here, but that's okay. I'm at 300%. All right, let's do this butterfly and then we'll call it. So F9 key to bring the panels in. Let me download the module before I forget. And I should have rebooted my computer this morning. It's dragging a little bit. It just feels a little bit sluggish right now. Okay, so let's apply extra detail again. This composition's not bad as it is. Maybe just a little bit tighter, but we'll keep it over here to the bottom left. I kind of like that look. Maybe even lower. All right, let's select the butterfly and let me move this around. Maybe I can get a little bit, yeah. Let's give this butterfly some a little bit more light, a little bit of clear view and some micro contrast. And some vibrancy. Okay, good. And we need to do the tips a little bit. So I'm going to add a submask. I doubt the AI tool is going to get, yeah, it's kind of got it. There we go. Good. All right. I think all we need to do really is let's add another new mask. It's just a vignette. So I'm going to turn, oops, not opacity, but chroma and luma, if I put that to 0, feather that out a bit, then invert it. And then let's just darken the background a little bit. Maybe not quite that dramatic. Let's see. Okay, let me go back to the butterfly. Just a little bit less there. So this one thing is a little distracting because it's kind of splitting the image into half. It's funny, I didn't see that when I first cropped this. Now I see it. Let me see if there's anything else. Because if I go this way, it's way in the frame. We'll just have to leave it, but I don't want it to split the frame in half. So maybe we'll go in the opposite direction. All right, we'll go with that. Now it's a little bit out of balance though, because the leaves don't cover the whole bottom. How about front and center? I'm going to go with front and center. This one stem is just messing up any composition that I want to try other than front and center. Even then, I still don't like this. I mean, I could try and brush it out, I guess. What if I do this? It's kind of there. I just have to be careful around the wing. But it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't quite get rid of it. So we'll just leave it in there. So I can delete all my corrections, just hit reset here. We'll just leave it in there. So let's go ahead and compare side by side. All right, so obviously the original on the left and the edit on the right here. It needs a little bit of less green tint. Let's go over here. Oh, and this is a JPEG, so that's partially why I'm missing a little bit. But let's get rid of... Let's do that, just a little bit warm. I didn't realize I was on a JPEG. But okay, so... Because when I was trying to darken the background, it wasn't moving what I usually... You know, when I was creating the vignette, it wasn't quite adjusting the tones the way I was hoping. And now that I see this JPEG, that explains why. The gradations aren't quite as smooth. But let's go ahead and see if we are able to extract any extra detail out of the butterfly. Yeah, definitely. Definitely even a JPEG, we were still able to pull out quite a bit. Because, like, look at the body here. I think that came out pretty good. So all we'd have to do is maybe just a little bit of manual noise reduction. Oh, there's already some there. Okay. We do a little more. All right. So that's the final image. Okay, I'll check the chat section, and I guess we can call it. Rob is so generous with his time editing. Oh, thank you, Heather. Hit the like and subscribe. And Paul preferred his color version. Yep. And EDC says, I apologize, it wasn't very good capture. It was difficult to take as I had to weave focus through the foliage. I took the shot because they were framed inside a heart-shaped branch. Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't notice that myself. This one here. I think that this is the one you're talking about. Okay. And then let's see. Hannah says, yeah, I treated myself to, oh yeah, R6 Mark III and a one. Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty sweet setup you got there. And the feather detail is great on the heron. Yeah, that came out really good. I mean, that's a really excellent wildlife camera because the 33 megapixels give you kind of a really nice balance of pixel density and speed, right? I don't know exactly the specs on an R6 Mark III in terms of frame capture and all of that, but it's a pretty fast camera. And of course, Canon always makes great glass, especially their L glass, right? It's always really good. And the butterfly one is yours. Okay. And I edited my butterfly image. I did a lot of the worst things to it. Okay. I get that. Hopefully you like the edit that I did. But yeah, that one stem is what kind of got in the way for me in terms of composing the image. And Heather says, I wonder if you were to edit the butterfly tall with the middle stem, it would work. Um, we can try it. I don't, I didn't get a feel for it personally. Um, let's try a 3x2. And I could rotate the image a little, except it's tough to do geometry after the fact. I mean, that's not bad, because now the stem is kind of framing the butterfly. That's not a bad idea. I think that composition works just as well, as not better than the one I just did. So good suggestion there. But okay, so everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sending your images in. If you enjoyed this, you can always subscribe, click the like button, make a donation, buy me a coffee, become a member, all those good things. Or click on the link for the DxO and purchase DxO using my affiliate link. That's the best way to support the channel, because then we can both learn, right? And continue to learn using this tool. And like I was saying at the beginning, I'm going to try and put together a tutorial over the coming weeks, going into depth and in a more methodical way of my editing process and workflow, because every time you run into an image, like I had a lot of different images today, the workflow is similar, but there's some differences. So I want to just create something. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for being here today. Have a good day. Try to do that every day, and you'll have a good life, right? Eat healthy.